Okay, well, welcome everyone, and my name is Clare Larkin-Sykes from Larkin-Sykes Advisory, and thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. So this session, we're actually bringing together some leading voices from industry and academia to explore themes that are rapidly shaping the future of the resources sector. The application of advanced technologies, including digitisation and AI, and models for how it can be applied to address key industry challenges to enable next generation resource development. So we know our sector is facing a number of complex challenges, from productivity to sustainability, from decarbonisations to navigating what future skills will look like. And the application of advanced technologies, as well as the tools for collaboration, are fast becoming the foundation for how we design, operate and innovate. We heard this morning from, in the plenary, some of the key messages. So, for example, the Group Procurement Officer from BHP, Rashpal Singh Bhati, emphasised shared problem solving and ecosystem partnerships are the foundational models for us to rethink traditional processes, uncover new efficiencies and create solutions that were previously out of reach. So with that introduction, I'd love to turn to our panel. Thanks so much for joining us. And Vanessa, I'm going to start with yourself. As CEO of Austmine, you work closely with members across the industry. From your perspective, what are you seeing with regard to technology adoption and advanced technologies? What are your observations on timelines to significant solution developments? And what do you see as the mining industry focusing on first? And what early impacts are you seeing?
Thank you, Claire. No. Hello? There we go. Got it. Thank you, Claire. There's a lot of questions there, so I'll try and unpack that. Look, at Austmine, we represent the met sector, so we have sort of an ideal front row seat in how technology adoption is evolving across the value chain, across the last 35 years that we've been watching it, obviously now. So what's clear is that we've definitely moved beyond the pilot phase. There's no doubt that digitisation, AI, is really embedded into many mainstream operations these days. With varying degrees of, I suppose, sophistication and adoption, so it varies significantly from one organisation to another. But look, in the short term, I think what we've seen probably is the strongest adoption in operational efficiency and asset optimisation of the two areas that we've seen. Things such as AI-driven maintenance, data analytics for plant performance, and the evolution and maturity of digital twins, all of these things really delivering measurable value for the sector. So I guess moving forward, the next 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to see it more strongly aligned with integrated decision systems. And that word interoperability that we've been banding around for many years now remains. It really is still an issue in terms of how systems talk to systems. So linking geology, operations, energy, supply chains through interoperable platforms. We think that's probably where the real next step change lies in the next 3 to 5 years. We're also seeing AI being applied to sustainability and ESG reporting, helping companies predict environmental outcomes and automate compliance. So that could also be transformative in future years. But look, overall, I think we're definitely heading towards a more connected, intelligent ecosystem that's really sort of data-driven by design and not by retrofit, which is pretty much where we have been up until sort of the last few years, I think. So, so it's a really quite optimistic future.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa, for those insights. And David, I'd like to turn to you now as CEO of the UNSW Institute for Industrial Decarbonisation. You're deeply involved, really, in enabling research, translation and technology development for industrial decarb. What are you seeing as some of the more exciting developments, as well as some of the challenges? And I'm particularly interested in your perspectives on, where you see the convergence of resource extraction, downstream development, energy generation, as well as data services. And are you seeing any sort of near-term breakthroughs or trends in terms of the convergence of those particular themes?
Yeah, thank you. You're right. A lot of things are coming together very rapidly, and The digital transition is driving a lot of the technology convergence. But in very concrete ways, we're seeing opportunities for the data services sector, AI data centers, to be co-located in regional hubs where they're providing edge computing services to the mining sector and to the downstream metal sectors, and also other heavy industry like the chemical industry, but most importantly where they can access cheap, clean energy to power follow-the-sun compute services. Because, as I'm sure most of you know, Australia is being targeted by the hyperscalers as the Southern Hemisphere hub for trusted data services, data centres, AI data centres and so on. Now, there's potentially $60 billion in annual economic uplift just from that sector alone. So if you put together that growth in the data centre sector with Australia's endeavour to get up the value chain with minerals, in other words, to move away from dig it up and ship it out to actually trying to capture more of the end value of those minerals in Australia, you can see there's a very nice synergy between the digital sector and the metals sector. And I say metals because we really need to connect up mining with those downstream processes, right through to opportunities for manufacturing high value density products under the government's Future Made in Australia plan. So I think ConnectOre is a really good name for the platform that the Copper Association has pioneered with other mining stakeholders, because we need to connect the industry and to share knowledge and to do shared problem solving. Now, as I'll just finish 1 second, as you probably know, most mining companies are intensely competitive and don't share high granularity data with each other, but there are instances where mining companies do collaborate. Green iron is one of those areas, for example, which as a university we're heavily involved in. And I think we really need mining companies to collaborate around this getting up the value chain story.
Thanks, David, and I love the word connect up, because now we'll go over to John to talk a little bit about ConnectOre. John, you lead the International Copper Association Australia, and you've been leading a major initiative there for the last few years. Could you tell us a bit about ConnectOre and how you see our industry coming together more effectively to solve shared challenges? And what role do collaborative platforms like ConnectOre play in making that happen?
All right. So the first part is really to define what is our industry today. And our industry is not just the mining companies and the METS companies. It's research organizations, it's universities, it's technology boffins sitting in a quiet room in Silicon Valley. It's the government. And so let's expand what we mean by industry. And we also see in terms of when we built this digital knowledge platform to enable mining executives to make better far-reaching decisions when they're expanding their mines or building new mines, giving them not just an understanding of the copper industry, but of the molybdenum, the zinc, the nickel, and the gold industry. So what started off as Copper Connect is now more broadly ConnectOre. And as we build out, we've been very reliant on iteratively using technologies available through the METS companies. But today we're living in a world of rapid change, with quantum computing, digitization, AI, etc. And the mining executives sitting in their offices need very quickly to identify what are the technologies that will impact them, not today, but in 5 to 10 years. And that's the scope of the build-out of the mine. And so we built, through the help of some great research groups, we did 5 deep dive research studies into the key emission themes on copper mining, which is applicable to gold and molybdenum, nickel and zinc. We underpin this with an AI platform, and it's now called ConnectOre. And the purpose of it, particularly, is to enable people in that huge, wide knowledge system to connect to each other, so that a mining executive can connect to a METS company in Chile or in North America, or to a research organization working on mineral characterization in Silicon Valley. And so they can collaborate and on the platform to solve some of their future technology challenges. And that's really what ConnectOre is about.
Fantastic. And so I think, Vanessa, if we sort of come back to, John mentioned, the players in the ecosystem. So from an Australian METS perspective, so effectively a collective, and you're a key player. The MET sector is a key player and a key stakeholder in that ecosystem. How do you see the value of ConnectOre, and what are some of the challenges that the MET sector faces in terms of their technology being adopted and becoming mainstream in the mining value chain? And where do you see potentially the value of ConnectOre could play with that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Claire. The Australian MET sector has got the advantage of having, decades and decades and decades of looking at how mining's been doing things. And we've had, burning platforms in the last few years around safety and then sustainability, and obviously commercialisation remains there. We've learnt from that, and Australian MET sector is a very advanced sector in terms of the technology that they use both within Australia and then we export across the globe as well. So we're very well advanced down that pathway. Austmine represents 800 members, but to be honest, that's a tip of the iceberg in terms of the full suite of people working in the mining value chain, which is probably in excess of, I don't know, thousands and thousands. So there's a lot out there. Look, I think a key strength that Austmine really drives forward is that collaboration mindset, is really trying to get people to understand that you have to work together, you have to share knowledge together, you need to do those things. It's very difficult to go it alone. So I think that's where ConnectOre comes in with a definite strategic pathway that many miners and METS companies could look at. I think the challenges are a little systemic, and they're not new challenges. SMEs sort of having world-leading solutions but then struggling to scale, not sometimes understanding how to scale or not having the support to, or often just the capital to actually sort of scale. There's always procurement barriers, and we hear that time and time again, that the innovation can wither on the vine as we wait for a procurement or a number to come through that we can actually get into the system. It's difficult to find the right people to speak with at the right time to move the innovations forward, so that can definitely be a barrier. Ongoing talent stream, I think, will be an issue as it's moving more digital and AI and tech. We've got to make sure that those guys do not go into those software sectors and come into the mining sector, because there's a definite brain drain that can go in a different pathway. Now there's definitely crossover in terms of skill sets in different sectors these days. There's no doubt that we can do work in defence, in space, agriculture and METS, and there's a lot of operable sharing of that sort of knowledge. But you still want the good IT people coming through into our sector. So look, I think aligning digital standards, streamlining pathways for tech adoption and supporting of scaling, places like ConnectOre can bring all that together and bring that knowledge base together and get people to start talking, building those communities, having those conversations. So I think that's where it all can hopefully pull together.
Yeah. Thanks, Vanessa. And then David, over to you in terms of both the long, recognising the long lead times in general for, say, new mines, new extensions and technology, innovation adoption in terms of established mining operations. Various decisions need to be considered in terms of integrating innovation into business models and also managing risk and, managing those decisions. As well as, John mentioned that ConnectOre, for example, also gives a line of sight to some of the longer term emerging, research and innovations on the horizons. I'd like to get your thoughts on, plans for how industry can effectively engage, with institutes such as yours or with UNSW, say, in general, to be able to get that line of sight and to connect with the right researchers to be able to activate and accelerate innovation.
Okay, well, I think a really key point to make is that knowledge is only part of a problem. New technology, sharing of information gets you part of a way, but overarching all of this is the public narrative. And in the plenary sessions, we heard a lot of great stuff about what it will take to kick the Australian metal industry up the value chain. right now we dig it up and we ship it out. But there are some really significant challenges to overcome if we're going to start valuating our minerals in Australia. Electricity is one, and the big barrier to the introduction of masses of international capital, which will be needed for new plant, is licensing. The sheer amount of time it takes to get a mine approved and then to actually get minerals to market in Australia compared to other competing jurisdictions. Right, so one of the big dividends from a platform like Knowledge, like ConnectOre, is the public-facing and the narrative aspect of it, because government, miners, metal makers and so on need to be communicating an evidence-based, plausible story to the voting public about why mining and metals is our most economically important industry, and one which needs most backing to remain competitive in a very competitive global economy. Right, so back to UNSW. I mean, our mining school is leading a very important national research and translation program with BHP and Epiroc and other core partners called NextGen Min, which is about inventing the next generation of mining methods. Now, we'll be using ConnectOre as a platform for communicating about that research, about progress and about what kind of results we're getting from it. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. What we also want to do with ConnectOre is to communicate to politicians, to industry, the general public, a positive story about where Australia is heading in connected approaches to the value chain in Australia. It doesn't involve sharing competitively sensitive information. It involves collaboration around the really tricky political and financial issues that face innovation in the sector.
Thanks, David. And I think, great point. It is just the tip of the iceberg. And John, perhaps if you could respond to that, when you look at ConnectOre, with everything, all of the stakeholders and aggregating the stakeholders, as well as technology itself advancing so rapidly, what's next at a practical level for ConnectOre?
Well, a couple of really good points have been made by Dave and Vanessa. And Vanessa talked about the struggle for great technologies by SMEs to actually see life. And David is talking about there's a lot of great intention by a lot of people that never quite comes to fruition. And the challenge with everything is to get the smartest people in the room working on a project with passion. And so we're bringing, on the platform, we've started off establishing an independent governance committee. We'll have the Zinc and Nickel Association in, Austmine, University of New South Wales as a starter, and then we're hoping to get a few other patrons coming in relatively shortly to build up a governance so that we're actually going down the right path, but we're socializing what we're doing with a number of people through universities, research organizations, METS companies, etc. And I think we've been doing a fair bit of work with the mining companies already. We're running a lot of workshops with the technical teams at mining companies just to test whether the AI functions and the data functions and the community the bulletin boards are the sort of thing that they will use in their day-to-day practice. Essentially, we want a mining executive to use the function to bring together the world's best technologies on a certain topic and give him an understanding of where the industry is going, who to connect to, whether it's in North America or it's in Finland or it's in Asia, to help them improve their understanding or access to this technology, and then collaborating with them and others to make it happen in their industry. So we've got a fair bit of work to do to get patrons and members, but we're on our way. And I guess next year when you come and see us, this is going to be a living, breathing beast that's going to be used globally by mining executives. So it's a pretty exciting path.
Thanks, John. And I guess we've got just a minute left, so just some final comments from each of you. Vanessa, I'd like to ask each of you, what single action should the mining industry take now to secure its role as a global leader in trusted knowledge, advanced technologies, and models to accelerate innovation adoption?
Thanks, Claire. Look, very briefly, I think the single most important action would be to treat data as a shared asset, not a competitive one. That's a big statement. I know there's a lot of IP, there's competitive advantage, but I think until we get to that point where we're comfortable that frameworks allow us to do that so we can share the knowledge that we all individually have, collectively put that together, I think that's the way forward for me.
Thanks, Vanessa. David?
Well, I'd say work more energetically and effectively with Australia's great universities. Right, we're training the future staff of your organisations. Part of that is really thinking about technology convergence, thinking outside the silo of mining as a profession and really looking at the other areas. It's about systems thinking. But of course, universities like ours are very good at building industry projects. I mentioned the one we put together with BHP under the Australian Research Council grants. There's a massive amount of government support now for innovation in the mining sector and, of course, the whole value chain for critical minerals. You've heard about it today. The opportunity is there for all of us to tap into that. And I'll bring it back to ConnectOre. Great information gets presented at conferences like this, and I'm at a lot of these meetings, as you all are, and we see great stuff, but it's not usually aggregated in one place in a coherent way. And ConnectOre will be a curated platform, and we hope it will be the best place to go to really understand what the big movers are in our industry and the progress that is being made.
Thank you, David. And a final comment from you, John.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, Vanessa. I think that the key thing you've asked is how do we become a global leader in digitisation and AI in an industry, it's a global industry that's attracting capital everywhere, and frankly, maybe a bit more capital is being attracted to other destinations than Australia at the moment. So how do we become the best? And I think David's really, and Vanessa have covered it. If we can get access to the best information and we can collaborate and connect with other people using it seamlessly and in a trusted way, then, and people become empowered and confident to do that, then I think we'll move the dial.
Can I make just one comment? There's a lot of scaremongering about AI and how it's going to take away all our jobs. I actually think it's going to go the other way, that if something is published on the internet, a large language model can find it. And increasingly companies are going to stop putting their people out, their information out into public fora. What that means is that human beings, people in this room, are going to need to think really carefully about how to work together to achieve things that are of great social and economic importance. Now, Australia has a nation-building opportunity around the minerals value chain. Right? We're not going to get there in face of competition from, well, let's say China, if you're in the METS field, if we don't think really differently about how we work together as individuals. Now, we can't rely on AI to do that for us. We can use AI as a research assistant and so on, but ultimately it comes down to our individual intelligence and working collectively together. And there isn't really a huge appetite for that in Australia, so we need to share success around working together and to do it in really pragmatic ways which help us each get our individual KPIs delivered.
Thank you, David, and thank you, John, and thank you, Vanessa. I'm hearing collective intelligence and collaborative action. So thank you very much for your great insights, and please join me in thanking our panel.